The Montreal Canadiens stave off elimination, taking Game 4 in overtime. Gentlemen, our coverage here on the fourth period brought to you as always by Bitbuy, Canada's #1 cryptocurrency platform. And Wardo, I want to start with you and the lineup changes. They might have been subtle, but they definitely did make a difference in Game 4 for the Habs.
Yeah, I think Ducharme was limited in what he could do. Clearly, they're not changing the goaltending or the decor from the top four. So I think that it's more of a psychological move from Ducharme's approach that as a team you look at what's different about Game 4. How do you effectuate a change, and what is out of the norm? So the fact that he tinkered with these lines, specifically Suzuki, Caulfield, and Anderson, clearly effective. These guys put up the numbers. Anderson getting his 2 goals. I think overall, too, it kind of changed the identity of the team. We expected a little bit more sandpaper or confrontation in front of Vasilevsky, and it turned out that Montreal effectively took the same approach Tampa's had through the series, and they're a catalyst with the physicality all over the ice. So it raised the level of confidence. I don't know what it was about their game or their overall approach, but they kept the game close. So from Montreal's perspective, it's something to build off of, and that's key going into Game 5 in Tampa. Clearly, the mayor of Tampa got exactly what she wanted.
You know, it's interesting because the Canadiens' approach in this game, it seemed like it was very reminiscent of what we saw in the previous 3 rounds, where they, especially to start the game, allowed Tampa to do their thing, and they capitalized on potential opportunities that they ended up creating. Now, it didn't lead to too many goals, obviously, for the Canadiens, but it led to the one to start things off in this game. Nick Suzuki with a beautiful feed over to Josh Anderson to give them a 1-0 lead in the game to get things going for the Habs. So, yeah, the subtle changes, as you mentioned, Wardo, those things definitely helped. Some not so subtle, obviously, with Kotkaniemi leaving the lineup, but the Canadiens were able to spread their offense around. They clearly wanted to be in a position to be a little bit more resourceful from an offensive perspective when the opportunities arose, and they clearly did that. And as the game progressed and as the second period started to get going, they had a little more jump in their step and a little bit more confidence.
It'll be really interesting to see, actually, from Montreal, what their evaluation of their decor is at the end of this game. Their top 4 took 12 minutes in penalties. And with that, you had guys off the ice at key moments. Clearly, the change of Romanov pays off on the stat sheet, scores a goal. But after that, I would tell you that 2, specifically Kulak and Romanov, were very leaky. Romanov scores a goal. In the next shift, he gives up a breakaway to Johnson on the 2-on-1 with Maroon, where he eventually scores, takes himself out of the play. These young guys, again, some of the risk you run with not being familiar with the situation, and Tampa's a very savvy veteran team and knows how to basically do small things to free themselves up. Maroon runs a bit of a pick on Kulak in the neutral zone, frees himself up with a 2-on-1 goal. I think, again, you got to make an evaluation of Ducharme going on the road now, being first in making the change, and knowing that you have to really essentially have your D be unnoticeable. They don't have to be great. Some guys just have to eat some minutes and be unnoticeable. You may get an opportunity now to see a guy like Merrill come back in.
I know Montreal was obviously playing in desperation, being down before the game 3-0 in the series. You obviously don't want to get swept. But Aaron, when you look at the Tampa Bay Lightning heading into Game 4, was their mindset different at all in the game?
Well, truth be told, from experience, the closeout game is the hardest, because before you even step into that locker room, you know that the opponent doesn't want to go home for the summer. That inevitably you have to find within yourself the same level they're going to get to, because they're there, they're forced, right? So they're at their peak performance. They're going to come out in the first 10 minutes. They're going to bang, they're going to crash, they're going to shoot everything. They're going to be their best. And sometimes a little creep of doubt is, can you get it done? And you also have that artificial fallback, that cushion of, well, we still have Game 5, 6, and 7 we could go to. So that's a hard place mentally for a hockey player to get it done. Clearly, a lot of guys would love to finish it out in original 6-town, finish out in front of Montreal fans, and ruin the experience for them. So for the Tampa guys, again, it's maximizing the opportunity in Game 5 and doing it then, and don't give Montreal life. That's the worst thing from that locker room. I experienced it in 2006. We were up 3-1 against Edmonton, and we ended up going to Game 7, and that was not a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, well, obviously you want to close out as soon as you possibly can, and obviously, Wardo, you know from experience that, yeah, as you said, that is the hardest one to get going, to get the W in. And we saw some spurts throughout the course of the game where some of the Tampa players, some of their top guys weren't at the same level. But at the same time, we saw Montreal adding a lot more physicality to guys like Braden Point, putting a lot more pressure on him. We saw Shea Weber tossing the body against Point and others throughout the course of the game. It seemed like Braden Point was actually a guy that they were picking on for the most part. They wanted to get under his skin because he kind of drives that line right now, because we know that Kucherov is not playing at 100%. So, yes, it was a tough one. Matthew Joseph, by the way, kudos to him. He had a tremendous game for this team, really performed well for them, but obviously not able to get this one done, and we head back to Tampa on Wednesday.
Well, one more thing we have to remember, too. If you look at Tampa went to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. The majority of that lineup has this experience. Montreal didn't not only not go to the Stanley Cup Finals last year and feel at ease being in this circumstance, they're not familiar with Tampa. They played in the North the entire time. So now you've got a group of guys that have to acclimate and assimilate to the situation and then have to understand your opponent. Now after 3 games, you know what's coming. You know the long stretch passes. You know what Hedman's going to do every time. Now you know Vasilevsky loves to play on his knees and the top corners are available. You start to see those tendencies kind of evolve routinely, and then you can react accordingly because you are understanding and comprehensive of the entire situation, because it's now happening over and over. I think that's where Montreal is at right now, is the system, yes, but also knowing the opponent really helps them out come Game 4, and we'll see if it helps them even further in Game 5.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for this. Montreal Canadiens, once again, I get to use my favorite term in the world, stave off elimination as they take Game 4 at home, 3-2 in overtime.